The Allied fleet was dying. On the main screen of the Velm command ship, the battle was a silent, terrible light show. Bright flashes marked the end of a starship. The smaller, darting red lights were the enemy, the harvesters. They moved like a swarm of insects, hungry and endless. For every harvester ship destroyed, 10 more seemed to take its place. Commander Kale, a tall being with gray skin and tired eyes, watched his screens. His hands were flat on the control panel. He did not move. Around him, his crew worked with quiet panic. Warning lights painted their faces red. The air smelled of fear and burned electronics. The last shield generator is gone, a tactical officer said, her voice thin. The planet is open. Lyra Prime was a green and blue world below them. It was home to billions, a member of the Allied Council. For 3 cycles, a combined fleet of 12 species had fought above it. They had fought bravely. But it was not enough. The harvesters were not like other enemies. They did not take prisoners. They did not want to talk. They only consumed. They took planets apart for their raw materials, their organic matter, everything. Now, their massive, ugly mothership was moving into position. It looked like a dark, spiny rock covered in strange growths. From its belly, thousands of drop pods fell toward the unshielded planet. The ground invasion had begun. The battle for the sky was already lost. Kale closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, his decision was final. "Order the fleet," he said, the words heavy. "Full retreat. Save who you can." A murmur of grief went through the bridge. They had lost. They had truly lost. Leaving Lyra Prime to its fate was the worst moment of Kale's long life. But to stay was to die for nothing. His communication officer looked up. "Commander." A signal from the human observer. Kale almost waved it away. The humans. They had sent a single small ship. They called it an observation post. They had watched the whole battle, offering no ships, no weapons, only analysis. Kale thought they were cowards, hiding behind their studies while others died. But protocol was protocol. "Put it on," Kale said, his voice full of bitter tiredness. The main screen changed. The view of the dying planet was replaced by the calm face of a man. He had dark hair and wore a simple gray uniform with no rank. His name was June. He was the human liaison. "Commander Kale," June said. His voice was steady and quiet. "This is not a good time, liaison," Kale said. "The battle is over. We are leaving. You should too. Your little observation ship will not last long out here alone." "We have observed the harvester tactics," June said, as if Kale had not spoken. "Their pattern is confirmed. The mothership must descend to low orbit to direct the final consumption phase. It is happening now." Kale stared. "Yes, we see it. What is your point? Are you finally here to give us a lecture?" "No," June said. "We are here to engage. Earth will deploy a ground force to Lyra Prime." A harsh, broken laugh escaped Kale's lips. Some of his officers turned to look. "A ground force? You have seen what is happening down there. The sky is raining drop pods. The surface will be covered in harvester drones in minutes. Your soldiers, if they even land alive, will be torn apart. It is a suicide mission. It changes nothing." On the screen, June's expression did not change. It was neither angry nor proud. It was simply focused. "Your analysis of a conventional military engagement is correct. This will not be conventional. We require your fleet to perform one more action." Kale's patience was gone. "We are retreating." "You must not retreat yet," June said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "In 47 minutes, your fleet must execute a coordinated tactical jump. You will jump toward the Harvester mothership, to these exact coordinates." A stream of data appeared on Kale's navigational screen. It is a feint, an attack run. It will force the mothership to focus its full attention on you. It will bring it into the exact position we require. That is madness. Kale slammed his hand down. That jump location puts us right in the heart of their main swarm. We would be surrounded. It is not a feint. It is a massacre. My fleet is all that remains of 12 species courage. I will not throw it away for a human fantasy. June was silent for a moment. He seemed to be listening to someone else. Then he nodded. We understand the cost, Commander. The feint will draw their focus. It will create the opening we need for our deployment. You will take heavy losses. This is calculated. But it is the only way to save Lyra Prime. And what will your famous ground force do? Kale asked, his voice full of scorn. Throw rocks at them? They will deploy the WAN protocol, June said. The name meant nothing to Kale. To facilitate this, your medical teams must prepare. They must prepare for large-scale triage of non-human biological contaminants. Have your decontamination procedures ready. The bridge was utterly silent. Biological contaminants? Triage? This was not the language of soldiers. This was the language of doctors. Or of exterminators. Kale felt a cold confusion push aside his anger. The human was not acting like a military man. He was giving instructions like a scientist setting up a dangerous experiment. June, what are you sending down there? June looked straight into the camera, into Kale's eyes. The right tool for the job, Commander. The battle, from your perspective, is lost. We perceive a different set of problems. Now, will you execute the maneuver? Time is short. Kale looked around his bridge. He saw the faces of his crew, stained with defeat. He looked at the screen, at the Harvester mothership getting fat and happy over Lyra Prime. He thought of the billions below, their final moments of terror. He had no hope left. But this human, this calm, strange human, had a plan. A terrible, costly plan that made no military sense. But it was the only plan left. He took a deep, shuddering breath. He opened the fleet-wide channel. His voice echoed with a final, grim strength. All Allied vessels. This is Commander Kale. Retreat order is suspended. New navigational data incoming. Prepare for a coordinated tactical jump in 47 minutes. We are going to make one last run. He paused, the weight of his next words crushing him. May the stars have mercy on us all. He cut the channel and looked back at June's face on the screen. You have your feint, human. I hope your tool is sharp. June gave a single slow nod. It is. Stand by. The silent tide deploys in 40 minutes. The screen went dark, returning to the view of the planet and the enemy. The battle was lost. But somewhere, in the dark of space, small, silent human ships began to move. Commander Kale stared at the data stream on his screen. The coordinates for the jump were precise and utterly suicidal. They placed his ragged fleet out on the edge of the Harvester swarm, but deep inside it, a spear aimed directly at the monstrous mothership. He understood the tactic in theory. It was a classic, desperate move. Draw the attention of the giant by poking it in the eye. But against an enemy this numerous, it was less a spear and more a piece of meat thrown into a grinder. Across the bridge, the mood had shifted from despair to a tense, fearful resolve. His officers worked faster, their voices low. They were preparing for a death they had just accepted was coming. The human liaison, June, had sent additional instructions. They were not about weapons or shield frequencies. They were containment protocols, lists of required medical filters, and sterilization settings for their sickbays. The instructions specified the handling of unknown biomatter and airborne neuroactive particulates. Kale's chief medical officer, A slender being named Alara approached him. "Commander, these human protocols. They are for a level 10 biohazard. We use these for planetary plagues, for world killer viruses. They want us to seal all ventilation and use internal recyclers only. They are telling us to treat the space around the battle as if it is infected. Perhaps the harvesters have a biological weapon," Kale said, but he didn't believe it. The harvesters were the biological weapon. "Perhaps," Ilara said, doubt clear in her large eyes. "But the instructions are for post-deployment. They are for after the humans do whatever they plan to do. They are expecting contamination." The countdown ticked. 30 minutes until the jump. On the observation deck of the small human vessel, June stood perfectly still. He watched the harvester movements on his own screen. His focus was not on the big ships, but on the streams of data about Lyra Prime itself. Atmospheric composition, microbial density, ocean salinity, deep core geothermal readings. It looked less like a military briefing and more like an environmental survey dot back on the Velm Bridge. The communications officer called out, "Commander, I have a Captain Hai-Jin on a secure human channel. Audio only." "Put her through," Kale said. A new voice filled the air around Kale's command chair. It was a woman's voice. It was calm, clear, and carried an undeniable authority. There was no background noise, no sound of a ship's engine or a busy command center. It was the quiet of a deep, empty room. "Commander Kale, this is Captain Hai-Jin. CBRNX, we are beginning our descent. Your feint must be precise. Your arrival will pull the mothership's sensor umbrella to the north. Our entry vector is from the southern magnetic pole. You must hold their focus for 14 minutes after your jump." 14 minutes, Kale repeated, his mind doing the calculations. His fleet might not last 4 minutes in that swarm, let alone 14. "We will try, Captain. What is your mission objective? What target are you hitting?" There was a brief pause. "The objective is systemic collapse. The target is the planetary biosphere interface." Kale blinked. "Explain." "The harvester organism does not operate in a vacuum," Hai-Jin said, her tone as flat as a textbook. "It connects to a planet's life systems to fuel its processes. It uses local fungal networks for nutrient transfer. It uses the hydrosphere for coolant and transport. It integrates. We will sever that integration." It sounded like science, not war. "You will sever it. With explosives?" "With corrective agents," Hai-Jin replied. "Our drop zones are not military or population centers. They are oceanic trenches, deep karst cave systems, and the polar ice shelves. Your feint gives us the window to land there unnoticed. Once deployed, our actions will become visible. Expect a strong biological reaction from the harvester ground forces. Your people on the surface, the ones still fighting in pockets, will need those medical filters. The air will change." A cold understanding began to dawn on Kale. They weren't sending soldiers to fight the enemy. They were sending soldiers to poison the well. "You are going to make the planet itself toxic." Another pause, longer this time. "We are going to make it incompatible. The harvester is an invasive species, Commander. It operates on a logic of consumption without balance. Our purpose is to reintroduce balance. A rapid, and from their perspective, fatal one. Juan Protocol is active. We drop in 9 minutes. Good luck with your maneuver." The channel went dead. Kale sat in his chair, stunned. An invasive species. They were not fighting a war. They were performing an extermination. A planetary-scale pest control. "All ships," he said into the fleet channel, his voice stronger now, fueled by a strange new horror. "Jump in 20 minutes. All medical teams implement Biohazard Protocol 10. Seal all external vents. I repeat, full environmental lockdown. This is not just a battle. It is a cleanup. Be ready. The final minutes crawled by. Kale watched the Harvester mothership. It was like a vast, patient spider, its legs the tendrils of ships and energy reaching down to touch the planet. The human plan seemed insane. A handful of soldiers, landing in the most remote places, thought they could bring that thing down by spoiling the planet's environment. But June's calm and Hyjin's cold certainty had planted a seed of something he hadn't felt in days, a sliver of doubt about their inevitable defeat. It wasn't hope. It was the nervous feeling you get when you see a small, specialist tool you don't understand being brought to fix a huge broken machine. You don't know how it works, but the person holding it does. 10 seconds to jump, his navigator called. Kale gripped the arms of his chair. He thought of the billions below. He thought of the strange human soldiers dropping into the dark places of the world. He thought of words like corrective agents and systemic collapse. Execute, he said, dot space twisted. The stars streaked, and the broken, brave remnant of the Allied fleet vanished from the edge of the battle, reappearing a heartbeat later in the heart of hell, surrounded by the red lights of the enemy, right under the shadow of the mothership. Alarm screamed immediately. The Harvesters, surprised for one single moment, turned all their terrible attention toward this new, foolish threat. The feint had begun. And far below, unseen, a dozen small, dark pods fell like stones into the deep sea and the dark caves of Lyra Prime, carrying Earth's most dangerous soldiers to work. The dropship fell in total silence. There were no roaring engines, no screaming thrusters. Its outer skin was coated in a material that drank in sensor energy and gave nothing back. It was a shadow dropping through a storm. Outside, the sky was full of fire and falling alien pods. The human ship slipped between them like a ghost. Inside, the soldiers sat perfectly still. They wore dark, flexible suits that clung to their bodies. The suits had no glowing lights, no bulky armor plates. They looked more like deep-sea diving suits or hazard gear than battle dress. Their helmets were simple, with wide, dark visors. The only sound was the calm, even rhythm of their breathing in the internal comms. Captain Hyjin watched the data on her wrist display. They were 30 seconds from splashdown. Their target was not land, but the black, churning waters of Lyra Prime's deepest ocean, the Midnight Trench. The other teams would be heading for the ice caves and the continental sinkholes. The worst, most hostile, most ignored places on the planet. Her second, Sergeant Taeyong, sat across from her. He was checking the seals on a large, cylindrical canister locked between his knees. The canister was a dull gray, with simple warning symbols for biological hazard and extreme pressure. It did not look like a weapon. It looked like something a scientist would take a core sample with. Pressure field is stable, Taeyong said, his voice quiet in her ear. Dispersal mechanism is green. Acknowledged, Hyjin replied. Her eyes were on the mission timer. The Allied fleet would be engaging the mothership right about now, drawing all the attention upward. The Harvesters would be looking at the sky, not the deep sea. Prepare for deep immersion. The dropship hit the water. The impact was a soft, giant push. The world outside the viewports went from fiery orange to deep, dark green, then to absolute black. The ship's external lights did not turn on. It sank, powered down, a silent piece of sinking metal. They fell for a long time into the cold and the pressure. Hyjin thought not of the enemy, but of the reports. The Harvesters were efficient. They used planetary biomes as ready-made processing plants. Their scouts had mapped Lyra Prime for months before the attack. They would have tapped into the geothermal vents for energy. They would use the vast, planet-wide networks of deep-root fungi and microbes as a natural digestive system to break down complex organic matter. Why build a factory when a planet already had one? The harvesters didn't conquer worlds. They plugged into them. And that was their flaw dot. Her dropship settled on the ocean floor with a gentle thud, stirring up a cloud of silt in the impossible dark. A door slid open silently. Freezing, pressurized water, black as ink, flooded the compartment. The soldiers' suits adjusted, maintaining warmth and balance. They moved out into the abyss, their movements slow and practiced in the heavy water. They did not use bright lights. Low-frequency pulses from their helmets painted a ghostly, greenish picture of the terrain in their visors. The world around them was alien and empty. Or it should have been. But the harvester presence was already here. Tae-yong's sensor tagged it first. A strange, pulsing, root-like structure, glowing with a soft internal bioluminescence, ran across the ocean floor. It looked organic, but also mechanical, like a thick vein made of black glass. It was a harvester conduit. It was sucking nutrients from the deep-sea microbial mats and piping them up toward the surface. Target located, Hai-jin said. Deploy primary counteragent. Slow and even dispersal. Tae-yong moved forward. He placed his canister on the seabed next to the pulsing root. He entered a code. The canister opened with a silent hiss of bubbles. A thick, dark gel began to ooze out, not floating away, but clinging to the root structure like a hungry mold. Where it touched, the soft glow of the root flickered. The gel spread, fast, moving along the conduit like it was following a trail. Agent is bonding, Tae-yong reported. It's using their own transport system against them, distributing itself. On another continent, in a cave system so deep the rock was warm. Another team, led by a soldier named Ji-hun, was doing similar work. They placed canisters that released a fine, persistent mist into the cave's moisture. The mist was designed to attach to specific spore types, the kind the harvesters used to spread their fungal network. This was not an attack with lasers or bullets. It was an attack with information. The corrective agents were biological and chemical tools programmed for one purpose: to find, bind to, and disrupt the precise harvester systems. They were smart poisons. They were targeted plagues. Back in the trench, Hai-jin watched her sensors. The gel was moving fast now, kilometers along the conduit in minutes, spreading through the connected network. The first reaction was subtle. The root's pulse became irregular. Then it began to darken, the light dying from the inside out. The structure didn't explode. It rotted. It softened and collapsed in on itself, dissolving into a harmless, inert sludge that was quickly swallowed by the ocean sediment. Conduit neutralized, Hai-jin said. But her work was only starting. Move to secondary target, the thermal vent cluster. Above them, on the surface, the battle raged. The Allied fleet was dying, ship by ship, in a brilliant sacrificial fireworks display. But below, in the dark and the deep, a quieter, more final war had begun. The humans were not cutting the monster's limbs. They were poisoning its blood. They were turning the planet's own body against the parasite that had attached to it. They were the silent tide, and their first wave had just reached shore. Up on the surface, the world was screaming. Harvester drones, like giant six-legged beetles made of black chitin, marched in perfect lines. They carved through the last pockets of allied resistance. They harvested everything. Trees, buildings, animals, even the soil itself were sucked into processing pits that glowed with a sickly green light. The air, once fresh, now smelled of acid and decay. In a broken city, a squad of Velm soldiers fought from the ruins of a tower. Their energy weapons scorched the shells of the drones, but it was like trying to stop a flood with a candle. Their commander, a veteran named Loris, felt the ground tremble with the endless footsteps of the enemy. He fired until his weapon overheated. This was it. This was the end. Then something changed. The nearest processing pit, a bubbling organic vat of dissolving matter, made a sound. It was a wet, gurgling choke. The green light flickered wildly. Instead of drawing material in, the pit began to vomit it back out. A flood of half-digested sludge spilled over its edges. The thick, root-like tubes connected to the pit turned black and shriveled, like plants hit by a sudden frost. One of the marching drones stumbled. Its precise, mechanical gait became jerky. It took another step, then its front legs collapsed. It fell to the ground, twitching. A dark liquid, not the usual glowing green ichor, seeped from its joints. The drone next to it did the same. Then another. It was not an explosion. It was a sudden, total failure. A silent collapse. Loras lowered his weapon. What is happening? He looked up. The sky was still full of the lights of the space battle. But now, a new color was spreading across the horizon. A rusty orange-brown smear, like a vast stain, was blooming in the atmosphere, carried by the wind from the direction of the great fungal forests. The air itself began to feel different. It grew sharp and acrid. Some of his younger soldiers started to cough. A voice crackled in his helmet, the Allied emergency channel. It was the human liaison, June. His voice was still calm, but now it carried a note of sharp warning. All Allied ground forces. This is human observation. A widespread biological counteragent is now active. You will observe immediate degradation of harvester ground systems. The atmosphere will become contaminated with non-neurotoxic but highly irritant particulates. Activate your environmental filters if you have them. If not, seek hard shelter. Avoid all contact with harvester fluids. They are now biologically unstable. Repeat, do not touch the black fluid. Loras stared at the fallen drones leaking black oil. He fumbled with his helmet, sealing it fully for the first time in days. The sharp smell vanished, replaced by the sterile air of his suit. Around him, his soldiers did the same. They watched as the relentless advance of the harvesters simply stopped. It didn't turn into a battle. It turned into a die-off. Deep under the polar ice, Sergeant Su Min watched her own set of readings. She was a medic, but her tools were not bandages. Her canisters had released a cloud of microscopic machines into the subglacial rivers. These machines did one thing. They targeted the specific chemical markers of harvester waste coolant. They bonded with it, changed it, turned it from a stable fluid into a viscous, clogging solid dot far above her. In the heart of a massive harvester ground hive, the cooling systems began to fail. The hive overheated. The internal pressure built. The structure, a towering spire of fused biomass, didn't explode from an attack. It ruptured from the inside, like a fevered body, spilling its dead and dying contents across the frozen plain. Captain Hai Jin and Tae Yong had moved from the ocean, trenched to a coastal zone, where the harvester land and sea systems connected. They saw the results firsthand. The great intake pipes that sucked water for processing were now clogged with a thick gray foam. The connecting tissue between drone clusters lay limp and dissolving on the ground. The harvesters were not being defeated. They were being unmade, taken apart at the microscopic level. A harvester overseer, a larger, more intelligent drone, scuttled over a ridge. It saw the two human figures. It raised a weapon limb, a glowing biocannon. It fired. Hai Jin didn't dive for cover. She just watched. The glowing green bolt of plasma fizzled in the air halfway to her, dissolving into harmless smoke. The chemical balance of the air itself had changed, becoming hostile to the harvester's energy reactions. The overseer shuddered. It took a step toward them, its movements slow and painful. Black fluid dripped from its eye clusters. It let out a distorted, grinding sound that might have been a scream of pure system error. Then its legs buckled, and it fell, crashing to the ground not 3 meters from them. It did not move again. Tae-Dash-Yong walked over to it. He prodded it with his boot. The hard shell was soft underneath, like rotten fruit. "Protocol is effective," he said, his voice flat. Hai-Jin looked up at the sky. The rusty stain was spreading. The planet was fighting back. Not with anger, but with sickness. The human soldiers had simply given it the right medicine. A medicine that was poison to the invading life form. Back on the Veln command ship, Commander Kale was clinging to his chair. His ship was badly damaged. Half his fleet was gone. But the Harvester swarm, the swarm was breaking apart. The ships were not being destroyed by weapons fire. They were drifting. They were going dark. Their formations fell into disarray. "What is happening?" He whispered. His sensor officer turned, her face confused. "Massive system failures, Commander. Across all Harvester units. It's like a power outage. But it's biological. Their energy signatures are fading. Not being cut off, just fading." Kale looked at the planet below. He saw the orange-brown stain in the atmosphere. He remembered the humans' words. Corrective agents, biological reaction, systemic collapse. They hadn't attacked the army. They had attacked the environment the army needed to live. They had not won a battle. They had cured an infestation. And as he watched, the giant, terrifying Harvester mothership in low orbit began to tremble. Its lights, a million points of green evil, started to wink out, one by one, like a city being hit by a rolling blackout. The battle was over. The cleanup had begun. Silence. That was the first thing Commander Kale noticed. The alarms on his bridge had stopped screaming. The frantic reports of enemy fire had ended. The only sounds were the low hum of his damaged ship's systems and the shaky breaths of his crew. On the main screen, the Harvester mothership hung in space like a dead thing. No lights moved on its surface. No weapons fired. Smaller Harvester ships drifted, powerless, bumping into each other in a slow, silent dance of debris. The battle was over. But no one cheered. "Scan the planet," Kale said, his voice hoarse. "Find me the human teams." The sensor officer worked. "I'm reading. Minimal Harvester life signs. Fading fast. Their structures are collapsing. I'm picking up the human dropships. They are lifting off from multiple locations. No pursuit. No enemy engagement at all." Kale watched as small dark dots rose from the stained atmosphere of Lyra Prime. They moved without hurry, climbing back toward their observation vessel. Their job was done. "Open a channel to the human ship," Kale said. The face of June, the human liaison, appeared on the screen. He looked the same as he had before it all started. Calm, clean, unaffected. "Commander Kale," June said. "Your fleet's sacrifice was noted and vital. Thank you." Kale just stared. He felt empty. He felt saved, but it did not feel like victory. It felt like he had survived a terrible surgery. "What did you do?" he asked, the question simple and heavy. "The Huan protocol was a success," June said. "Harvester activity on Lyra Prime has been terminated. The planet's biosphere is undergoing stabilization. The counteragents are self-neutralizing. They will break down into harmless base elements within 72 hours. The atmosphere will clear. Your people can begin recovery operations." Kale listened to the clean, scientific words. Terminated. Stabilization. Self-neutralizing. "Captain, Hai-Jin said she was introducing corrective agents. She said you were fighting an invasive species." "That is correct," June said. "You didn't fight them." Kale's control broke, his voice rising. You didn't meet them on the field. You didn't shoot them. You poisoned their world. You made the air and the water and the ground itself kill them. June tilted his head slightly. Yes, it is the most efficient method for a biomass-based consuming threat. We observed their integration with the planetary systems. To fight the creature, you must fight the environment sustaining it. We removed the sustenance. The organism could not survive. It was so cold, so logical. Kale thought of his own soldiers, bravely firing their weapons, dying in a blaze of light. He thought of the human soldiers, dropping into the deep dark, placing canisters. They were not warriors. They were exterminators. What are you? He whispered dot on the screen. June was replaced by another face. It was Captain Hai-Jin. She was still in her sealed suit, but her helmet was off. Her black hair was tied back. Her face was sharp, intelligent, and showed no emotion. Behind her was a plain gray wall of the human ship. We are containment, bioresponse, nuclear extreme, she said. Her voice was the same one from the audio channel, clear and certain. CBRNX. My team are specialists in hostile environment remediation. Remediation? Kale repeated the strange word. On Earth, Hai-Jin continued, as if giving a report, we have a long history. We have fought wars against things you cannot reason with. Viruses, bacteria, invasive insects that eat entire forests. Radiation that silences life. You cannot shoot a plague. You cannot reason with a toxin. You contain it. You alter the conditions so it cannot live. You sterilize. The harvesters are the same. A galactic-scale invasive pest. We applied the appropriate solution. Kale thought of the orange stain in the sky. The drones falling over, rotting from the inside. You poisoned a world to save it. We applied a targeted, temporary antibiotic to an infected ecosystem. Hai-Jin corrected him. The planet will heal. The infection will not. Your people are alive to see it heal. That is the outcome. There was a long silence. Kale looked at the broken remnants of his fleet on his own status screens. He looked at the dead harvester mothership. He understood now. The humans had not come as fellow warriors. They had come as doctors to a plague house. They saw a problem they had seen before, and they fixed it with terrible, precise tools. Your observers, Kale said slowly. They were not watching the harvesters' tactics for a battle. They were studying their biology for a diagnosis. Yes, Hai-Jin said. We needed to identify the infection vector before we could prescribe the cure. Your feint provided the window to administer it. She paused. Your courage was not wasted, Commander. It was the catalyst. But our tools are different from yours. You deploy soldiers. We deploy protocols. The channel closed. The screen returned to the view of space and the quiet, dead victory. Down on Lyra Prime, the wind began to blow, scattering the rusty stain. The black fluids seeping from the fallen harvesters were already drying up, turning to dust. In the deep ocean, the gray gel had dissolved, leaving only healthy seabed. In the caves, the mist had settled, harmless. The human dropships docked with their main vessel. Sergeant Taeyong stored his empty canisters. Medic Su Min logged the environmental data. Captain Hai-Jin sent her final report. Protocol complete. Planet stable. 0 friendly casualties. They were Earth's most dangerous soldiers. They had won a war without firing a single shot that anyone could see. They had not come for glory. They had come to clean up a mess. And as the Allied fleet limped toward the healing planet, already buzzing with relief and rescue ships, the human observation vessel turned quietly and jumped away, its work done. It left behind a saved world, a grateful but deeply unsettled alliance, and a new, sobering understanding of how humanity fought the wars that truly mattered.